training. They're involved in a day-to-day basis of actually treating patients on the ground. I don't know if you know, in Israel, one of the first things that Tikkun Olam did was they put medical cannabis into an old age home in a little city right next to where I live. And all the patients were doing fabulously. They increased in weight. Their happiness scale went up. And these are all people, you know, waiting to unfortunately pass away. Very, very unhealthy patients. And we got a lot of data back from that we can then measure the actual effect of cannabis on these elderly patients. And when we think about cannabis, the community I think about as cannabis consumers are my parents. Because they're the ones, if you look in America, the people that are presenting to a dispensary for the first time are over the age of 50, they're usually women and they can't sleep at night. So those are the patients we're treating. So Irit Avisar, from the nurse's perspective.
Should I stand on the stage? You don't hear me? Okay. So, hi. Sorry for my voice. I'm recovering from it. Which one? This one is working? Sorry. Okay, so hi, my name is Irit Avisar. I'm a registered nurse and a lawyer. I founded with another nurse last year, like 2018, the Israel Medical Cannabis Nursing Association. And we are about to start next week the third cycle of the cannabis course for nurses. We already have 18 nurses and graduates, and February will be the third cycle, May the fourth cycle, and we are not going to stop because we have an aim and a mission to teach and educate more and more nurses. So I will talk about the patient perspective. I would like to say that first of all, cannabis enhances homeostasis, and not only THC, CBD is very important. And it works in the system, like if you can think about the mobile, you can think about all the systems in our body, that each system, if you are getting medication, so it's for example, for blood pressure or something else, the medication is working in one of those systems. But when you are getting CBD, for example, cannabidiol, it enhances homeostasis for the whole body, like all the systems. So also, of course, THC is important, but as we see from the clinic field, we see that maybe sometimes it's enough very low THC, and we prefer more CBD. So high THC sometimes has side effects, and therefore it is very important to combine CBD with THC. So we're talking about strains or products, and as we saw here inside and outside, we saw some things very interesting and rings and all kinds of ways to consume cannabis. But we have to remember that it's all not only cannabinoids, there are also terpenes and flavonoids, and we have to remember that it is important to use the full spectrum. Okay, so we always have to remember that by different strains, different quantities, different percentage, one can become comfortable, healthy, and happy, because being happy is very important. The patient wants to feel good, and sometimes his pain is so bad that he's not happy. But cannabis can make him happy too. And it's not bad to be happy, no? So in Israel, we have 10 suppliers, and our patients, we have 42,000 patients now. They're receiving from one of the 10 suppliers, and 8 of them are farmers and 2 suppliers. And you can see the variety is very big. We have the Cannapedia, so each one can enter and see, and it is really not that easy to choose. So as a patient consultant, I sometimes find myself looking in the Cannapedia and thinking about the specific patient and what should I suggest him, and I don't know. And there is a big problem. Why don't I know? The Israeli Ministry of Health asked the farmers and all the suppliers to only write 3 ingredients. All the products have only THC, CBD, and CBN. So this is very sad, since THC is important, as we know, since it is psychoactive. CBD is very important, since we all know most of the patients now in Israel, they are seeking for more CBD. So we all need to know how much percentage is CBD in the product. And CBN, you know why the Ministry of Health wanted it to be on the label? Because they think it's important to know if it is old or not, since THC degrades to CBN. But CBN is also very important, since Dr. Yossi Tam and Professor Itai Bab, the late Professor Itai Bab, and there are lots of studies that CBN is very good for the bones. So if there is a patient with osteoporosis, he needs CBN. But the Ministry of Health, they said all the products should be labeled that CBN is under 1%. Okay? So later on this conversation, you will hear how we can do it different. So the patient should ask himself how much is he going to consume, how much cannabinoids he will take, how long before he will feel the effect, because there is a difference of the way of consumption. It is different if he's taking sublingual, orally, or inhalated. So, and how long will it last? Because if you see the routes of administration, the way the patient is taking the cannabis, it really, really is important, since it depends on his way of living. If the patient is working or studying, if he has to wake up in the morning, take care of his kids, take them to kindergarten or school, and then go to work. So he still has to get treated, and we want him to be, you know, if he needs to drive, he cannot drive under influence of cannabis. So if he takes inhalation, he can smoke. You know, 80% of the Israeli patients are smoking, and it's really bad to smoke. I am a former smoker. 18 years ago, I quit smoking. So when I meet a patient and he's saying he's smoking and it's the best for him, I ask him to change and use a vaporizer, since using a vaporizer is still inhalating, okay? But without the combustion, okay? You don't breathe the bad things of a cigarette. Even if there is a clean, only cannabis cigarette with no tobacco, still it's not healthy. And another thing, if you want to get the whole spectrum and you're smoking, you are burning the cannabis. You are not really getting the whole spectrum. You are getting only the high temperature cannabinoids. So if a patient is using a vaporizer, he can switch it on and turn it on the amount of Celsius he likes to, and then he can realize the difference, because he feels the terpenes, not only the cannabinoids. And as we know, the terpenes have a very, very important place in the cannabis consumption. So some patients take it sublingual. They take the liquid oil they get. Unfortunately, they get it in olive oil. As we saw before with Professor Simon Benita, it is very important to take it with coconut oil, MCT, milk chain triglycerides. If we are using the cannabis with olive oil, again, we are destroying it. So, as we know, it is important to use it sublingual, because it takes less time and less hours. If you take it orally, it's like eating it, edibles. So many patients, they don't get a good patient education, and then they take the sublingual oil and they just eat it with a yogurt or bread. So this is not what it was meant to be. And then what happens if you eat your cannabis, like you see the picture of the cake. So it is very funny if the patient doesn't know it will start after 2 hours, or if you are going to a party and someone told you there is a cannabis cake here, there are brownies, would you like some? And you take a piece and you eat it. And you say, it's not working, maybe I will take another one. And the patient is taking more drops because someone told him to put it on the bread. And the patient took it on the bread. And it is not working. It's the same as a young person going to a party and someone told him, it's not working, okay, take another piece. And he's taking another piece. And you know, when you are eating cannabis, it doesn't matter if you eat a brownie or you eat the oil. But if you eat the oil instead of sublingual, after 2 hours, it only starts. So if it is high THC, the patient or the man in the party, after 2 hours, just in 1 minute, started to go up and is really, really psychoactive if it had high THC. So many patients say it's not working, I will take more, and then they complain they have side effects. If they have side effects, of course they have side effects, since they did not get good education. So we know that the pharmacists are in charge of giving the patient education, but as we know, the nurses are next to the patient everywhere. In every situation, we see the nurse with the patient, okay? So another way of consumption, another thing. After 2 more hours, the 11-OH THC, 11-hydroxy THC, will stop and is more psychoactive. So let's go back to the party. The man in the party received a little cake and he said, it's nothing, I can take more, because he's used to smoke cannabis. If he's smoking a joint, he feels it right away, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and he feels getting high. If he's taking a cake, he didn't feel nothing, he took another piece, and then the party ended. He's on his way home driving, and then he started feeling psychoactive activity. 2 more hours, 11-OH THC started again. It's more psychoactive. So we have to tell the patient, if you're eating it, you have to know what is going on. So you can take it sublingual. It's the best if you don't want to smoke or inhale anyway. You can also put it topical, like if you have psoriasis or acne or many conditions on the skin, and even pain. If you have pain in your knee, you can take the oil and rub it. You can also use it as suppositorium in rectal or vaginal way. So what's very interesting is, and I'm not sure you know about it, is already being vaped, ABV or DAF. There are some names for it, but what is important to understand that is one of the main reasons I suggest patients to use a vaporizer is that first they can control it, and it starts very quickly, they feel it, and after 1.5 hours, it is going away. So if a mother has to drive her kids in the afternoon, okay, she knows she will use it in the morning or at noon. After around 3 hours later, she can drive safely because it is gone away. If she's taking it orally, she cannot control it, okay? But if she will take it orally at night, it's better. Then she can have a good sleep. She wakes up in the morning, she feels very bad, very good, yeah? Sorry. She feels very bad if she takes it during the day, since she cannot control it and she doesn't know when it will end. So the already being vaped is when you take out of the vaporizer the grounded material was decarboxylated, then you cook it with coconut oil. Remember the coconut oil? So, and then you can take it, you can make brownies or just take a teaspoon before going to bed. Okay, so it's not that easy because being an approved patient with a license, you can always in Israel use it in Israel. So many patients want to travel with it. Sometimes they are asking, can I travel abroad? So I tell them, by law, you can't, but you can translate and try to travel and check where you're going to, if it is okay there with the cannabis. So there are some points of consideration we have to think about, because most of our patients are with mixed ailments. Some of them take more medications, and again, as Simon Benito said, it is very important to ask the patient what is he taking. Since some of the medication he's taking, of course, are not allowed with grapefruit juice because of the bergectin, the enzyme, but something important, CBD, cannabidiol, is exactly like grapefruit, exactly. So in the enzymes in the body, in the liver, if a patient he doesn't know, he takes also CBD and other medication like he can take, anti-epileptic drugs, sedative drugs, sleeping aid, or warfarin, Coumadin, is in a danger of bleeding if he takes cannabidiol. So we have to always ask the question, and we have to remember what is the age of the patient, because there is a difference if we are treating a patient that is a child or a grown-up. If she is a woman, she is different than a man. If she's a young woman, she's different than an old woman, since the estrogen is also depending on the endocannabinoid system. So the woman's age is important, and we have to remember everything. The general situation, the day of living, working, learning, studying, whatever. So the patient education by nurses is the key for success. For all the reasons I said, it's really important to ask all these questions. And we nurses are used to be with the patients and ask the questions. We take a good intake and we get all the information from the patient, and then we can advise him what should he take or what to be afraid of, and side effects and everything. So there are potential medicine interactions, and we have to remember all of them. So I told you about my profession as a nurse, and now I want to tell you all that I'm not only a nurse consultant, I'm also a patient. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and fibromyalgia. I was very, very, very bad condition. I didn't sleep months. I was not sleeping at all. I woke up in the morning like I didn't sleep even 1 minute. I had pain all over my body. I have muscle stiffness. I could not tie my shoelaces. I had to get assistance of my young daughter. She was 4 years old. I was feeling so bad because every morning I had to call her and tell her, can you please help me? And I really felt bad. And every day I get more and more depressed. I received lots of medication and injections too. I had so much pain, I wanted to die. So I realized there is the cannabis treatment, and I was brave, and I went to my doctor and I started the treatment. It changed my life. It's really changed my life. And that's the reason why I thought it is my mission, not only to educate the patient, but also to educate the staff. Because the way I'm going and talking to doctors and nurses and the course and everything, and the association, the IMCNA, all the things I do is just, to spread everything. It's really important. Thank you for listening.
Irit just mentioned to me she's been 2 years without any pharmaceuticals, just treated with cannabis. Actually, there was a study done in 2012 by Maccabi, one of our big HMOs, Maccabi, who did a study on all the patients who were taking cannabis and all their other medications, since that we have integrated data on the two. And they showed a 25% reduction in the number of prescription medication that patients were taking, and a 35% reduction in the number of healthcare services. So generally you're happy, you don't go to the doctor as much, you're not depressed, you don't go to the dietitian. So there's a potential saving when insurance comes into the cannabis practice of up to 50% on healthcare costs. So it could be very, very significant. Our next speaker is B. Goldman, who has a lot of experience in cannabis and specifically ALS. ALS, as you know, Lou Gehrig's, is a debilitating disease, neurological disease. And what we're seeing is that the cannabinoids and some of the minor cannabinoids, particularly THCV and CBDV, have very, very specific therapeutic angles in rare disease cases like ALS. So I'm going to invite B up to talk about her experience in cannabis and ALS.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the invite to speak today. And it's a very difficult one to follow from Irit, which impressed me very much, your talk. And we already met and we're already teaming up. And we're going to work together closely because we have so many common threads. And everyone has their own story with cannabis. I have one as well, not as a user, but I'm an ex-intensive care nurse for 15 years in St. Gallen, and then I changed to the M&D clinic, the ALS clinic in St. Gallen, where I worked also 15 years until recently. And the first patient I had was a man. He had, from ALS, he had cramps in his knees, in his legs. And the cramps you could not treat. We tried absolutely everything on the spectrum to treat. And he had open wounds in between his knees because the cramps just pressed the knees together. And he was screaming in the whole, you could hear him through the hospital door. It was just a nightmare. And the only thing that helped him was cannabis. And it was a cannabis his son had organized. We had at that time, we had a source in Switzerland which was selling medical cannabis for 2 francs a gram. But it was sold to patients who had a medical confirmation from a doctor. The doctor just wrote a test that the patient is ill and could profit from therapy with cannabis. So it was sent by post. Okay, Catherine Whitman is gone now, so I can say that, but she knows about the whole project. And from that time, there was an illegal source of cannabis, and the patients kind of treat themselves. They smoked it, they cooked it, put it in the sauce, whatever. And I used to run, just through a very weird coincidence, I discovered a formulation of an oil which had a transfer rate of THC of 88 plus minus 2%. And Rudi Brenneisen from the University of Bern actually helped me validating that oil, and it's become now a formula magistralis by the Eiche Apotheke in Herisau. And that was 2014, the oil came on the market. But it was, for 7 years, it was a grey zone project, which I ran without any profit. Patients just paid for the peanut oil and the driving expenses. That's kind of my background for the whole thing. Today I want to take you to 3 areas of my work. It's on ALS, cannabis and hope. And you probably might ask yourself, why these 3 themes? Because I always tend to slip into things without really looking for it. But these 3 areas I'm specialized in. And just to give you a little bit of an overview on ALS, I don't want to go into too medical details, but you should know a couple of things, because ALS, you can think of a disease which is very close to every one of us, although it's a rare disease, it's an orphan disease. But ALS is like fast-forward aging, like someone switched a button where aging, instead of 20, 30, 40, 50 years, is done within 2, 3, 4 years, but people die. Normally after 2 to 4 years after diagnosis, patients are actually dead. You have some longer forms like Stephen Hawking's, he had this longer form, but ALS is normally a fairly fast form. It's incurable, it differs very from person to person. Only 2 medications which can slow it down. There's a progressive muscle weakness, especially the muscles you use for moving. And except eyes, bowel, bladder are not affected normally. And patients have an impairment of walking, chewing, swallowing, breathing, speech, hand function. And the symptoms they have, or the things they suffer from, are, like I said, cramps, spasticity, weight loss, appetite reduction, hypersalivation, breathing difficulties, muscle wasting, emotional suffering, social isolation, falls, and also this fairly new thing, 40 to 75% have cognitive changes. It means change in behavior or personality, which makes it difficult sometimes for caregivers. Then the financial or role problems, the helplessness, increasing caregiver burden, burnout, loss of autonomy, increasing dependency. And the last 2, that's the ones that puzzled me most, or I found most difficult as a nurse to deal with, is hopelessness and suicidal ideation, or suicidal thoughts. And if you look at the nursing or psychological literature, hopelessness is a bigger problem for suicidality than depression. So hopelessness, I think from a nurse's point of view, you're not trained for that, but we're always confronted with that, especially when you work in incurable diseases. I found that hope, addressing hope, is one of the most important things for patients, to make them not give up, to keep going. So there are many reasons why hope is important. Hope is a deciding factor for trust development within a therapeutic relationship. A lot of professionals know that, I think, but shouldn't know. That's why I teach hope in different schools and in different universities. And positive influence of hope has been proven as well on resilience and well-being, and also quality of life. There's a longer life expectancy of hopeful humans, and even the neurological guidelines from 2011 addressed hope for the first time, which was very new and really is a good thing. They said you have to discuss reasons for hope and do not take away hope. Okay, and the last one we could discuss, because you can't take or give hope. Hope is always something that stems from within, that comes from a person's inside. It's always individual, unique. Only a higher existence like God or whoever you believe can take or give hope, but from the human's point of view, hope has to grow. We have to create the atmosphere where hope can flourish, or hope can start and communicate in a way that this is possible. In 2008, just because it interested me, the different phases that people go through, I've explored the disease causes of 78 patients. It's not published data. And I found these 6 phases, which you can see here. When you turn to that side. And the 6 phases in a disease. When you look at medical literature, you only have, the doctors describe 3 phases, like diagnosis phase, therapy phase, and dying phase. But when you look from the nursing perspectives, you have these 6 phases, like the diagnostic phase at the beginning, where they think, they hope that the diagnosis is not true, that they find a cure. Then you have the coping phase as a second, where they hope that they find a strategy, that they can cope. Therapy phase is where they hope the disease progression slows down. And then the interesting thing I found was the carpe diem phase, which a lot of these patients have. They have their bucket list, maybe they go on traveling, they do things what they always wanted to do, they actually change their lives. And it's a phase where they enjoy life to the fullest, much more than people who have everything. And there's a late phase where people hope that they don't have to suffer, that the families can cope. In the late phase here, there's always the phase when breathing difficulties come, when they need a wheelchair, when they're bedridden or they can't move, they have maybe muscle pain or stuff like that. And on the last phase, they hope they can stay at home and die in peace. You see, like hope is a process starting from the bottom, either from people who have an existing orientation, a hopeful one, or also as a conscious decision that they decide for themselves, I want to be hopeful, I want to keep going, I want to try it. And all this can help to reconstruct their own meaning in life. They redefine themselves. maybe eventually also lead to the acceptance of living and dying as a normal part of our existence. You may ask yourself, where does cannabis come into that field? When you look at the different phases, for example, the THC can influence these two phases tremendously. And that's what you can see with people who take cannabis. The caregivers actually say he's not clinging to the disease anymore, he has more space for other thoughts, and he's much easier to cope with, he's less rigid, he's less anxious, and I'm convinced it helps him for a better coping. In the therapy phase, as we've seen before, it can reduce spasticity, it can improve motor function. On the carpe diem phase, it can actually increase their well-being, the way they feel of the world. And in the last phases or late phases, can actually improve the sleep or can help with sleeping, so they feel better in their body and have maybe also better acceptance. Hope has many different definitions, so I just picked out the one I think is the most, the one that will stay, in my opinion, for people in situations who are ill. It's Benson's definition that being incurably ill does not mean a hopeless life. It's more movement and development from purity of hope towards a life with hope that makes life bearable. I think this is one of the essence of ALS and cannabis. For me, this one of the substances that can cure or that can help treating so many symptoms with comparably hardly any side effects. There's no such substance that can cover so many different symptoms like cannabis. Patients have a lot of reasons for wanting to take cannabis, even if they haven't got any symptoms. Either there's symptom control, for example, as we looked before the symptoms, and also there are disease-modifying reasons. CBD, for example, has anti-inflammatory effect, because with every neurodegenerative process, there's always toxic waste, which damages the remaining tissue. And CBD can help within that process. Also a neuroprotective, neuroregenerative effect, actually helping with generation of new nerve cells. It's an antioxidant. CBD is 200 times stronger than vitamin E. Vitamin E is recommended for ALS in high doses. And it's also a immunomodulator. THC, as we all know, is muscle relaxing. They can help patients when they have rigid muscles. Against, for appetite improvement, against pain, against angst or fear. And when you look at the permits granted in Switzerland in 2017, nearly 50% was for neurological patients. This, I don't go into details, but just goes to show that in the M&D research web blog, there is increasing awareness, increasing interest in cannabis. A couple of studies show that, okay, they're all mice studies. Maybe it's not mice, you can say, but it is a start. And the new study is already starting from the Australian, as you can see in the next slide. Here it shows that cannabis improved motor symptoms, increased survival, because the mice have a modified form of ALS, they're SOD mice. They have like artificial form of ALS. And here it can provide neuroprotection in a mouse model. Here it reduced weight loss, preserved motor neurons of the spinal cord, and displayed anti-inflammatory effect in the mice. And it's the one that was Italian and the Spanish group. And here from Obi and colleagues, it showed that early interventions with cannabis and cannabinoids in high doses significantly delayed disease progression and slowed motor function, decline, and weight loss. And these are all very promising results, and all the patients, they're always on the internet because they've got time, they can't work anymore, so they tell us about these things and ask. The Australian study is going to start this January, and it's about proving that cannabis or cannabinoids can slow disease progression in ALS. So I'm very interested how that goes. 2 minutes. Here there's another interesting slide from a Canadian group where it showed in a group of patients with chronic pain the effect that cannabinoids use had on the consumption of different medications. For example, opioids, which from 184 patients, 65% took it. It could be reduced to 18%. And non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug could be reduced from 62% to 21%. And these numbers correspond also with findings from industry. For example, like in Oregon, big pharma turnover went down 40%. So that corresponds with that. Whoever has the key to ALS will have the key also to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease treatment. The one who can cure or finds a cure for ALS will have the Nobel Prize. So this is an incentive for research as well to invest into that field, as hard as it sounds, but there is a lot of has a lot to do with it. And when we think that ALS is like aging, so it means for me, cannabinoids are the perfect substance for a better aging, for a more bearable aging in future. And if a little fairy would grant me 3 wishes, okay, I added a small thing here as well, presumed that only a narcotics prescription is necessary, but this is real, it's going to be the case in 2 to 3 years' time, if our Bundesrat says yes to it. These 3 wishes would be that we could use it in a compassionate use. It means in all fatal incurable diseases, as a prima ratio use. Instead of a last attempt, we have it as a first attempt in heavy diseases like from the rheumatoid diseases, bowel, or the inflammatory disease, and it could be given first because these therapies are often very stressful and have a lot of side effects and very, very high costs. And the third reason for me would be the third wish that we could have it as a concomitant use. It means before or during chemo and radiotherapy. Would be my wishes for the future, and I think we're getting very, very slowly, but we're going to get near to it. Thank you very much.
So we're going to invite all of our panelists here to come up for Thank you everyone for your very informative talks on patient care and how we're actually using cannabis in the therapeutic session. If anyone has any questions, this is your time to actually get some medical advice for free. It doesn't happen very often, so Ellen, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question to Irit. Thank you very much for this impressive talk. I liked it very much, and it will interest me. In Israel, the 40,000 patients that receive cannabis, do they have all this wonderful following up from nurses like you, or it's only a small part?
Very good question, thank you. Most of the patients, unfortunately, are not follow-up at all. They meet the doctor once in 3 months in the best way if they have an appointment. Most of the patients are dealing with their illness and their treatment with medical cannabis on their own, asking on Facebook questions, and unfortunately receiving answers from people that are not professionals. So that's the main reason why I'm doing it voluntarily. Most of the work I'm doing, I'm not getting paid. Most of the times I'm going and I'm spreading, as I said, I see it as a mission since I saw on myself what it has done, and I didn't say it before. I'm already 2 years without nothing, but the down titration of Cymbalta was very, very difficult. I was like living on a boat for months. I was so dizzy and I feel so bad. So I know from my own experience, and I'm spreading it. So all the nurses that go through the course of a 48 hours course, 12 meetings, they receive all the information, and then when they go to the clinic, in the settings, in the hospitals, their patients will get good education. But most of the 42,000 patients are really on their own.
Any questions?
Because in Switzerland, the doctor is prescribing the drug, the cannabis, but he has to give it only for 1 month, not more. And every month he gives it again, the prescription, and then he has to write to the Federal Office of Public Health a report on the condition of the doctor. So it makes the doctor working much more, and he's not able to follow like it follows by the nurses.
Okay, it's a very important point, since in Israel, the doctors see the patients only in the private clinics, because in the hospitals, in the clinics of the HMOs, they are not allowed to prescribe cannabis. So the patients are really meeting the doctor just before the time they need to renew their license. And that's the problem. So some of the patients get the license for 3 months, and then they are lucky they meet the doctor again soon. But now many patients receive the license for 1 year. So the doctor should see them and everything, but there isn't a real good follow-up. So there is no one watching the adverse events or adverse effects, and some of them are good, but some are not. There is also an opportunity of abuse, and that's the main reason why I think nurses should be in this field and in charge of the patient education and follow-up.
So like always, I think that we can learn very much from your experience, but you can also learn from our experience, because our patients are also treated good, but there are only not enough patients are treated.
In Switzerland, this has changed tremendously. About 10 years ago, it took 7 weeks to get a license, to get a permit from the Federal Office of Public Health. Now, the fastest I've heard is 2 days. So if patients need it, they can get it. And the doctor has to report once a year now. It used to be every 6 months. It has changed a lot. And the 11 steps, which had to be fulfilled as a criteria to start, it went down to 7 steps. So there's a movement in a good direction, and a lot is increasing. The permits are increasing. The number of permits, and we just had 2 days ago, we had a meeting with the Federal Office of Public Health, and there are 2 motions on the way. Motion is a political, how can I say that? I don't know the initiative. Thanks. And one is the Markwalder motion that will open the borders for trade, for export. And the other one is actually to change the law for the prescription. It means that cannabis or cannabinoids can be prescribed only on narcotics without individual permit of the Federal Office of Public Health. And it depends whether that gets through to Parliament. It already went to the first stage, so now we have to wait for the second stage. It will be probably 22 where these things are going to happen. So we are all extremely happy about that from the medical side, also probably investor side, I suppose.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question. There we have the microphone ready.
I'd like to know, we heard a lot about the situation for ALS patients in Switzerland. How is the situation for patients in Israel? What is the treatment there?
There are no more, I don't know especially about ALS, but I do know that most of the patients in Israel are patients that have pain, and some of them all kinds of reasons. ALS patient can receive cannabis, but unfortunately our patients are waiting 2 months, not 2 days, for the permit. So it is really, really very sad, because the ALS patient or the cancer patients usually wait a few days, up to 2 weeks. But other patients need to wait 2 months. And ALS patients receive also cannabis, but I don't have any data, sorry.
Thank you, everyone.
speakers. And now we welcome you to the coffee break till 4 o'clock